And this is something that you can reuse if you wish to talk to your clients, because this is more, again, a strategy of how business would want to avoid project failures with AI. So, as I keep telling every session that I do, AI doesn't fail because it's immature. It's not about the capability of AI. Most of the technology is great. It's about how people are using it and why it produces disappointing outcomes to otherwise well-run businesses. And most of the time, the failure is before implementation even begins. It's before the tool's selected. It's when you make the decision of why you want to do something. Say AI doesn't work for us, they're usually describing that they regret doing it because there may be confusion, fatigue, or feeling that they spent time and money without seeing any real change. So it's not about the tool, it's about the decision made under pressure often rather than intent. So how do people get AI into their business? It normally seeps in because somebody gets it. A competitor saying, we're all doing it and you think you're falling behind. A vendor may come in and say, this is going to change your business, and it's framed with urgency. There may be a fear of being left behind. But you notice with all of this, it's a competitor, it's a vendor, it's a fear. It's not dealing with your customer. There's no problems that you're measuring. There's no measurable outcomes. And so people think you need AI, but they're approaching it wrong. It's the pressure. It's not strategy. They feel like it's necessary. They feel like if you're doing something, you're being productive. If you pause, you're risking falling behind. So teams move, they bring a new tool in, and once it starts becoming in their business, it's psychologically harder to stop and say, why are we using this? So most leaders, when they think about readiness, they look at their policies or governance or documentation, but it's a lot more than that. It only helps after something is fundamentally in place, and you still have to make that first decision about why you're bringing it in. So once you decide, then you can place the policies, you can put your governance, you can create your documentation, and sometimes you need documentation before you can even start. But in generally, what's missing is the intent. Why are we doing this? Or the constraints. If we apply this, what cannot break? What don't we want to touch that will ruin our business? And what's the definition of success? What does it actually look like? So without these questions or these answers to these questions, everything else downstream is just guesswork.
Mm.
So the strategy level readiness, the simplest definition I know, it means deciding why AI belongs in your business before deciding how it's used. If you can't explain why clearly, you're not behind, you're just not ready to choose the right tool. So tools are powerful. That's not the issue. The tools without a project create noise. They create activity without direction. Most businesses don't have an AI problem, they have a clarity problem, because everybody knows how to use ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, but is it a strategic initiative? Is it something that is transforming their business processes? So the readiness gap shows up differently depending on the size of the company. It's not the same root cause. So if you start with a small 1 to 5 person business, in the very small teams, AI increases speed. You can do things much faster. You can try to get results faster, and it can replace thinking, which you don't want to replace your thinking. You get faster drafts, faster research, faster answers, but you still have to make that human decision. And if you rely on AI, it becomes less deliberate. So a common pattern, of course, is let's just try this and see what happens. Let's bring this in. Let's see if we can build a business plan, do something. But unless there's that intent and the strategic thinking, it's just another tool to do things faster. If you get into a larger business, the 6 to 15, it becomes more experimental. People want to try new things, but nothing is rarely owned. No one defines what success means. You start getting more and more tools, as you may see. It's like, oh, let's start with ChatGPT and look at Claude and look at Perplexity and then Gemini, and then we have all these other things. And so the tools accumulate, the adoption fades, and AI just becomes something we tried. We didn't like the results. Again, it could be prompting. You don't know how to prompt properly, and so you get mediocre results. And is it worth it? It falls away. When you get into even larger companies, the 20 to 50s, the risk changes because now the initiatives are approved by the upper level management, which may be sold through a great demo. But if there's not a clear business owner, the leadership wants speed, ops worries about the risk, and teams feel attention, costs start rising, alignment erodes, and without the alignment, you just don't have a strategy that works. It tends to fall apart at some point. And whether that's in operations, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in teamwork and training, something may fail without an overall strategic plan. So, unclear intent compounds as teams grow. What feels like a small decision gap at 5 people becomes a real big financial or cultural issue at 30 because you have more people involved, there's more stress, there's more financial impact. And so vagueness scales really bad. You need to align, and if you don't, it becomes a failure. So vague goals, expensive experiments. You may bring it in because you want to improve efficiency or use AI more or stay competitive, but they sound reasonable. There's no actions, there's no measurability, and there's no results that you're trying to get to. So you don't tell anybody what to protect or when to stop, or you're not looking at long-term measurable results. So without looking at your objectives and seeing what your current costs are and what your return on investment is, it's just a lost opportunity, and you're losing organizational trust because your employees are frustrated because things aren't working and you want it to. But so without those goals, it becomes expensive experiments. So the real readiness sounds different. Most teams never have this conversation. Again, management sees a demo, it sounds really good, demos always work. Once it's tried to be implemented, they'll jump straight to a tool, they'll pick a vendor or an architecture, but they never discuss the upfront uncomfortable conversations about why are we using it, who's using it, who's responsible, and what are the ultimate costs. So, question number 1, what problem are we trying to make less painful? That's one of the main things that you should try to look at. It's like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Where's the bottleneck? What's not possible? It's not what AI can do. It's what pain can be addressed and fixed with AI. If the answer is fuzzy, everything else will be too. So you have to understand what problem you're trying to make less painful. Number 2, what happens if it fails? What breaks if you put something in and suddenly it ruins a workflow or completely changes things? Is it breaking your reputation, your trust, cash flow, team morale? The downside feels vague. The risk hasn't been understood. So understanding the downside risk clarifies the real problem we're trying to solve. If nothing breaks when it fails, that means it probably wasn't important enough to spend the money on automating. If it just looks like you're replacing something without real improvements, you may have some cost savings, but if nothing breaks, was it worth implementing? So last question, I think this is the last one. How would we know if this was worth it? Do you have the metrics? Do you have how much time was actually saved? What actually changes in the business if it succeeds? Is there a timeline when we can expect to see results? What were the trade-offs? Do we save time with employees, or are we putting more stress on one part of the business? So without a clear signal, experiments never end. They're always being tweaked. You have to have quantifiable outcomes, a time frame to complete them by, and noticeable results of where the effort was placed. So again, the conversation doesn't take long, but it does force trade-offs. It slows momentums. And that's normally why it gets skipped, because they want to move fast. And so 15 minutes of clarity beats months of confusion. Readiness isn't documentation. It's about producing, it isn't about producing artifacts. It isn't about how much documentation you can accumulate, because once things are documented, a lot of people don't refer back to them often. And so
Yeah.
if leadership is aligned, execution becomes simpler. If it's not, no cool tool can fix that understanding from executive down to lower levels. And the worst outcome really isn't failure, it's cynicism. If the teams aren't online, they're fatigued, the skepticism grows, the tool fatigue. It's like, and you mention a new AI idea and people roll their eyes, and instead of being energetic, they're like, oh, not another one. So the trust starts fading, and it's just putting technology in for technology's sake rather than, again, focusing back on what problem are we trying to solve. So some AI projects work perfectly. Dashboards run, outputs flow, but there's no meaningful change. So that's the most expensive failure of all. You spend all this money to improve, but it doesn't improve. And so technical success without strategic impact is still a failure. I mean, you may have saved some money on employee expenses, but you're now spending it on technology instead, and you're still getting the same results. And so where's the true payoff? So this isn't anti-AI, it's pro-decision. The technology is great. If it's applied properly, it's really powerful. It's about protecting your decision quality, saying not yet or no more often than it makes your strategic decisions much more effective. It makes you more effective as a leader if you're making decisions based on solving a problem rather than implementing technology. And so AI can be very powerful. It can be useful if it's placed in the right place at the right time. So you don't need it to catch up, you need it to decide. It isn't a race, it's a series of choices. Doing less intentionally, it preserves momentum and trust. So the path forward is clarity before tools. Questions, if this session raised more questions than answers, that's good, because readiness starts with better questions. Same with prompting. The better your prompt, the better results. Clarity before tools. Know what you're doing before what problem you're solving. Know what problem you're solving with clarity before you choose the tool. Find the right tool to solve the problem. And look at your systems, your underlying systems, before the hype. Don't believe every vendor demo. Don't believe all the hype, because a lot of the hype is nothing but marketing. And if it doesn't, again, solve the problems you're trying to fix to make your business more effective, more useful, it's not worth it. And so that is what I have today. I'm going to stop this share and stop the recording.